Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our fifth episode of Old School, New World, The Life of an Entrepreneur. I'm here joined with Joanna. Let me give you a little bit of her bio, if you will. And I typically are off script, but it's so important. She's a dear friend, so I want to make sure I get every word correct. So I will just sort of read off here, and then we'll jump into our episode, which is going to be dynamic. Joanna Muzzatti, president and CEO of Commerx, leads one of the few women-led companies in managed IT solution space. With a deep passion of entrepreneurship and leadership, she has dedicated her career to Commerx while fostering a legacy of care and personal touch for every client. Having held various roles with the company, Joanna brings a unique perspective to her leadership, emphasizing the importance of meaningful relationships and proactive customer engagement. Please help me join Joanna on today's podcast as she shares her inspiring journey from reclaiming leadership of Commerx to navigating personal and professional challenges with grace and determination. Hear her insights on leadership, resilience, and a culture of care. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Joanna Muzzatti. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. And one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on and talk to you and just hear the story of what you've done is because it aligns a little bit about what we're doing here and what my purpose is, which is to lead and be true leaders and mentor others if we can. So that alignment of what you've done, really, I hold dear and I have a great deal of respect for, of course. So again, thank you so much for joining.
I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to be here and to contribute. And anytime I get a chance to inspire or just be able to provide some insight to anyone who's on this path, or whether they're just beginning or well into it, I'm learning every day. So
yeah, and if you ain't learning, you're burning, as they say, right? So,
that's right.
And you and I have always had some pretty dynamic conversations, right, over the years. So I'm bold to have you join us and go over. Now, I've started to ask this first question to start off things to all of our guests. And so, Joanna, tell us, what is your superpower?
This is not like my imagined superpower I would have if I was a superhero, right? This is my superpower.
You can define it. You can define it any way you want.
No, I'd say, honestly, I think my superpower is my innate ability to always see the other side, to understand what different perspectives look like, and to really be able to take someone's comments or thoughts or feelings and put myself in their shoes. A natural empathy, I think, without diving too deep into feelings, just really understanding that everyone's perspective is different and they come by it through their lifetime, and nothing should be overlooked.
Yeah, that's remarkable. If anybody's going to have a superpower, the superpower of empathy is important, because you should be able to, or should apply empathy in your personal and professional life. If you're leading a group of people, it's important to remember they may not be having a good day, right?
That's right.
So, and we have to remember as leaders leading a group of people that there's not always roses all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's critical, and everybody learns different, everybody hears differently, communicates differently. Yeah. And it's my mantra. Choose kind is literally, I have it tattooed on my body.
Love it.
So you never know what someone's going through.
Yeah.
And where they're coming at you from. So
let me ask you then, is this something you've always had, or is it something that became, a superpower and something that you really helped closely and recognize over time? Can you describe that?
I would say it's naturally in me. I think if you look back at my grade 8 yearbook, as they were, my pet peeve when you used to fill those little questionnaires in was mean people. I really think that I always innately had this superpower, if you will. You develop it over time, and you develop how you react to someone, what you do with that information and the different perspectives. But I think it's something that's always been in me.
Okay. So talk to me then, let's lead into, we're going to bounce back and forth a bit, as comfortable as you are to talk about personal experiences. But let's talk about your entrepreneurship and Commerx. Give us a little bit of context about Commerx and how you got in, where it's at, one of the most difficult times being the president and CEO, and maybe one of the most fulfilling times. I know it's a lot to unpack, but let's maybe just tell us about Commerx first, and its role?
So, as you said, Commerx is a managed IT service provider. We specialize in mission critical environments, and Comrex actually just turned 40. We're in our 40th year of
Happy
business.
birthday.
Thank you very much. Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Yeah, right? I guess. Yeah,
That's
happy anniversary, right? I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
fair.
Nobody's ever said happy birthday, but
It was
yes,
born, it had to be born
in
at some point.
1984. That's right, it was.
So it had
Yeah,
to be.
so I actually call it my fourth sibling because my
Okay.
father started the business back in 1984.
Okay.
And I've worked there on and off for 35 years. I've had just about every role in the company other than technical. Funnily enough, we're a technical company, and I don't know. I'm not a technical person. That's definitely not my superpower.
That's okay. Sometimes when you're leading a great company, you've got to know where your strengths are,
Right.
and then you bring on the other people, right,
Absolutely.
to add that support, and they get full credit for what they're doing.
Absolutely. Commerce wouldn't be here without everyone on the team.
Right.
So I ebbed and flowed in and out of the organization, and everything from, working in the warehouse and doing secretarial work back in the day, and bookkeeping, marketing and events, inside sales, outside sales, operations, purchasing, and organically sort of grew into this role. And I took over as president and CEO, I think about 11 years ago now.
Okay.
So I ran the organization and spent a little time unpacking what was going on. And speaking of, I recognized what I knew and what I didn't know and what I needed in order to get the organization to grow. And so I hired a president to help me along the journey, someone who had strengths that I didn't have.
Did you call that person more of a mentor and a colleague, or how did you?
No, I would say so. I split the role. So I hired a president and remained as CEO, and brought someone in to help with the vision, that someone who had a little bit more of an operational mind and understood technology.
Right. And that's what we were talking about. You want to bring in those people that add the strengths to where.
Absolutely.
But it's important for you to know where your weaknesses are and strengths, because that's the tough part too.
Absolutely. And I think, that's one thing that is really important for anyone starting out a business or in a business, is to recognize that you don't know it all. I don't care how much you think you do, it really is valuable. It doesn't mean that you need to bring in other leaders necessarily, but, to rely on others and their strengths.
Yeah.
And so brought in a president, sort of set something up, but I took some time off while that president was there. I ended up taking a leave of absence, a sabbatical, which ended up leaving the role completely for a little while due to some personal struggles and burnout, actually.
Yeah, burnout is real.
Oh, it is real. It is real. So I learned a lot from that. And then, I ended up with a different president. We went through some changes. I recognized, that particular person brought us so far, but was the person to get us there, but not necessarily move forward. Hired another one, which had its own, benefits and a lot of challenges. And so recently had to make some more organizational changes. And that's when I reassumed the role of president and CEO, and did not replace the president. So it's now in its 40th year, and we're going through an entire evolution of Comrex, new branding, all of it. And so it's sort of the Commerx of the future, and it's Joanna's Comrex now.
Good. So it feels like yours.
Yes. For the first time truly in 40 years, it feels like mine. Like, it's not mine. I mean, there's so many other people.
Yes, no, of course.
But it's my vision.
It's still your baby.
Yeah, it's my vision.
Yeah.
It truly, I've been with the organization, as I said, on and off for 35 years. And so nobody knows its heart like I do.
Right. Revamping it and, rebranding it. Other than the optics, what's on the back end that you feel is, putting Joanna's stamp on it? I know you're super heart-centered, and, I'm a true believer of heart-centered leadership, which means, looking after the people and making sure they're seen and heard and supported. So do you have that sort of type of stamp when you
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Like, inclusion and diversity is like at the forefront. Comrex's mission is ultimately to provide ultimate peace of mind to our clients. So we take care of their data, right? So we take care of their gold,
right?
And we allow their technical team or their organizations to really hone in on what it is that's their superpower and what it is that they're trying to build. And we want to provide that peace of mind. Our goal is for them to be able to sleep at night, while we take care of everything. And things happen in the middle of the night, and things happen over the weekend, and all the cyber threats and data breaches. There's so much going on. Or even just information that, or patch software patches, all the things that happen in technology that happen in the background.
Yep.
And so through this, there's a way to take care of a client that it comes from a place of genuine, as you say, heart-led, right, and care. That was Commerx's motto for years. It was in our logo. We care.
Okay.
And it's funny, I think that we lost that for a little while. We were diluted. And I think that the leadership at the time had diluted that. And it was exactly what I recognized, which is why I took the power back, if you will.
Yeah.
And it was to bring that heart back to Commerx. And it's permeated. Like, I exited anyone who didn't live the values of Commerx, the innate love and care for each other and clients. Like, we're a people first company, not client first. My team and the clients are what's most important. And it's really easy to develop this organization now because everyone within the four walls that are Commerx, of course, we're all, there's remote and everything. I trust. Right. And I've actually laid down the law that no one, I don't care how qualified they are and how great they were in an interview, nobody gets through those doors anymore without a gut check from me.
Good for you. The thing I love about what you just said, when the leadership, they dropped sort of what was important, but for you to recognize that. And when you say you took it back, because sometimes the thing about in any business, whether it's corporate, entrepreneurship, you can learn from bad leaders.
Oh, yeah.
For what
I learned a lot.
Right. So you can absolutely learn what you don't want to be as a leader, but it takes courage to recognize, especially if you're leading the charge and you're seeing this happen, and then you grab the bull by the horns and you say, okay, we're going to need to reshuffle
We need
this.
to pivot. Yeah.
And then you put in your own style of leadership like you described, and good for you, because that's kudos. Because not a lot of people, will have either it's desire or want to do the things that need to be done to have the things that they.
Oh, it was really hard. And the crazy part is that we were having had some record sales. Mm-hmm. And so it looked on the outside that, it was successful and that there was some large revenue numbers and some good deals or some big deals. But
the culture
was being destroyed, and so I recognize it, not under my watch, like this can't happen. And, and taking ownership of it, like, truly being accountable for it and taking ownership with the rest of the team and saying, like, I let you down, and the support, and you can feel the hum of energy is shifted and everyone's on board. And it's really special.
Energy is real, right? Like the energetics and energy. And, sometimes, you don't have to do very much except vibrate a certain way and give off this feeling of, wanting to help. And it's just something that comes out of you. So I'm not shocked to hear that people felt you when you were trying to, direct the ship in the right way.
Yeah. Right. And I felt, speaking of energy, I felt mine being depleted. I felt it being changed. I felt it being buried and drowned. And it was...
Well, that's where the burnout comes from, right? Yeah. Like, if we're not paying attention to, how we're feeling emotionally and mentally, and we're ignoring it, it's only going to catch up. Like, you might be able to bury it aside.
You don't make good decisions when you're in that state of mind.
No, and a friend of mine just recently, shout out to Roy, how are you? We were talking about how, when you're tired or you're feeling that way, it's the universe or your body or your own spirit telling you need to rest.
Yep.
Like, it's not so I need to push through. Yeah. It should be the complete opposite, right? And the way he described it was, what happens when it's dark? You rest and sleep. And if it's sunny and really bright, if you're out there too long, you get burnt. Right? So you have to find a way to manage that as well, for sure.
And it's harder now than ever with, the access to your job 24/7.
Right.
Right? On the phones, laptop, tablets, and being able to work from anywhere. You think that's a blessing, but, you really have to have a handle on your own, as you said, energy.
Yeah. And, one thing I've talked about this book before, it's Buy Back Your Time. Sometimes when you're building a business or you even have a successful business, it's important not just to hire people to grow the business, but it's to buy back your own time, meaning, I put mine on silent. That's okay.
It is on silent.
Well, then it must have been another one. Maybe it's the laptop. That's okay.
That's the problem. These damn things can get our attention 24/7.
There's an example. So when you're hiring is to allow yourself to do the other things that lights you up. that allows you to, one, grow, helps you grow your business, helps you grow your personal life. So I was fortunate, Melanie, who I had part of my team since 2018, is now my executive associate. Literally is my right hand. I praise her every day, and I'm just so blessed to have her. And so my calendar is set for the year, right? And people say, "Oh, how can you do that? How can you be, organized?" In fact, that's the best way to do it. If there's a birthday, there's family time, you put it in because it's important to be balanced that way. So that book by Dan Martell, it's a great book. Anybody who's looking for a book to start a business, grow your business, great book. I highly recommend it. Talks about all of that and the importance of doing that, right? Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, it's critical. You got to find your outlet and make space for that. Make time for that.
Like I've been cycling for a long time, but this year was really the greatest year for me to cycle. And how I've created the business and having Melanie on board, Sean is there as well. It's allowed me to cycle Fridays and Saturdays. That's what lights me up. I love it. Like there's the endorphins and it helps me throughout the day. And, even leading up to the week to follow, you just feel a bit different, right? We talked about, making sure you're paying attention if you are feeling burned out or what have you, because when you talked about your company having great results, but the culture, I have a motto. It's a formula really for entrepreneurship and success. Some people think it's results equals activities times effort. It's really not. That example you gave where the culture was not good, that's because the results were there and it equals those two. It should be the opposite, really. Effort times activity or activities times effort will bring the results. And that's why, when you're trying to encourage a team or trying to find success, you want to make sure that, the results are the last thing. Obviously, we're in a results-driven business. In any business we are, right? Like any business that's created is to generate results. But you have to remember the activity and the effort that's required.
Yeah, and I don't think results should be the goal. Right. Results will come if you do what's right and you do what it is that you set out to do.
Yes, and you have to strategize about that. You got to bring everyone on the same page.
You just reminded me of something that, it's an old saying that, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And it's true. Yep. You can have all the plans in the world, but if the culture isn't right, if everybody's not on board, if you don't all have the same North Star, then, you might as well just burn that strategy and it's a free-for-all.
I found your experience over the years, especially with COVID changing a lot and how people interact with each other, what are some sort of key ingredients in the culture, especially in today's world where people are remote and some come in? Is there anything that sticks out to you that, you still think are the grassroots of having a really amazing culture in a business environment?
It's tough. I think a big contributor is actually being together. So having days that are mandatory to be in so that everyone is around each other and, have those conversations outside of the 30-minute, 15-minute, hour-long blocks that you have on screen, that when that meeting's over, you hang up and you go to the next one, or you hang up and you do something else, but you don't linger in that boardroom or linger and, have lunch together. Like all those things I think are important from a collective perspective and just a connection perspective. But culture, can go so much deeper, and it's really about how you treat your employees, how you treat your clients, how you insist that your clients be treated and how each other be treated, being careful of, language, making sure that everybody's included, making sure different voices are heard. I can't remember who said it, but I stole it and now I think it's mine.
But it's okay. I love it. It's okay. Nothing wrong with that.
It said, it's not that ideas are welcome, but ideas are expected. Like, I want to know, I want to hear from you.
Yes,
I want to hear.
collaboration.
100%. Like collaboration was like my word of the year last year.
Good.
Because, different perspectives can change everything, right?
Yes.
Like it's, the buck stops with me and I make the final decision, but I want the ideas because I can't think of it. My leadership team, when we sit around the boardroom table, we can't think of everything. It's that you're in the trenches, you're working with the clients, diverse backgrounds. Like there's so many different facets to, the collective thinking that there's things that I couldn't think of if I tried, right? But amazing ideas. Like someone recently, I rebranded us and redone the logo. We're in the midst of a soft launch right now. And I launched it to the team. And then I talked about ideas are expected. Again, everybody learns differently. Everybody contributes differently. So some people gave me their ideas right then and there. Some people I said, take me aside. I said, otherwise send me an email. It doesn't have to be, if this is uncomfortable for you, in your comfort zone, but if you've thought something that you would like to share, please do.
Right.
And someone pulled me aside and just made a comment about the new logo that I put a lot of thought into.
Amazing.
And, just made a suggestion. And I was like, yes.
Right.
Oh my God, we put it into change. It was a huge change in the background because, we're writing our branding guidelines. And so this is going to be law. And so we had to go back and change everything.
Yep.
But it was significant. That's how impactful this one little perspective was, because he was sitting over here watching it on the screen and had a comment.
They felt safe to express it, right? Because that's the thing too. If you're going to encourage ideas and make them, a must, then they have to feel safe and know that they can come approach you. Because it's one thing, there are leaders that do this. Well, I want collaboration. I want these ideas. And then you bring one over and they completely, almost like disrespectfully turn it down.
Yeah. Condescending. There's this,
yes.
Just like 100%. In fact, that almost made me emotional when you were talking, because when I had to make the latest changes and exit a few people, like I said, that's culturally being destroyed. It's because I didn't, after I'd made the decision and I knew it was happening, and after it was done, quite frankly, it was the first time in years that I felt safe in my own business.
I can see it.
Expletive is there.
Yeah.
It's a really wild feeling, but at the same time, it's kind of like, if I didn't feel safe and I run the place, quote unquote, then how on earth could anyone else feel safe, right? And so that was the part that I really struggled with, and that was my, real empowering moment. And what I really took accountability for was, this needs to be a safe space for anyone and anything. Like, there are no stupid questions, no stupid ideas.
My grade 3 teacher, Miss Rich, used to say, the only bad question is the question not asked.
Yeah.
So, because it's important, you're right. There's no dumb question. Like, you have to ask.
And I really feel that I've created, or am creating, that safe culture. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, no, of course. So in terms of, the safety and feeling heard, and you're in predominantly a male-driven industry in terms of IT managed solutions. Like I mentioned at the beginning, one of the few women leaders. Let's talk to our young women entrepreneurs. Like, anything to share with them in terms of what it was like to go through. And, you and I briefly chatted once a couple of years ago about how it was tough for you. Some men were super chauvinistic, I think, or they were just...
Yeah, they still are. There's a huge contingent of privilege in that industry. And still at the elite level in technology and in IT, it's still predominantly white men, right? And, there's a lot of diversity in technology itself, but in the space that we play, the space that I've grown up in, it's all a bunch of white men. And
there must be talented women.
Of course there
are. Are they hesitating to step up? What do you think is...
I don't know. I think it's the culture of IT. There's a lot of women leaders in, the financial parts of a business, in the marketing parts of a technology business. But, actually leading the business itself, it's still few and far between. Now, I grew up in the organization, worked there in the 90s and the 2000s, and it was a different world. It was a lot of boondoggles. It was a lot of...
Boondoggles? Is that a word? What's a boondoggle?
Is that not a common word?
I don't know. It might be, but I have never heard it. I just want to... In case our guests haven't heard of it.
Yeah, thank you. No, I these expressions, right? But so in the heyday of success in IT, and things were booming, and there was a lot of money to be made, lots of money being spent, and in the big organizations, the HPs, the IBMs, they would throw parties, right? Like, that's a boondoggle. Like, they have Christmas parties. They take you to conferences, and it would just be, party all night, and then conference during the day. Like, it was just constant, parties and drinking.
I appreciate the education, because I didn't know what in the world that would...
That's what it means to me.
That's fair. That's fair.
So, I had to navigate that as a young woman in a predominantly male, industry, where, women were 10% of the people in the room. Maybe it was 20%, but it became 10 and 5%, even less as I rose through the ranks, if you will. I was often the only woman in a room of leaders. And I'll never forget this one conference, this leadership conference that we were at. And there had to have been 30 or 40 different leaders from across Canada of different resellers across the country. And I was the only woman in the room. And the gentleman who was hosting it actually said, I'd like to thank Joanna for being here so we can call this group diverse.
Wow, you're kidding.
Yeah. There wasn't a black man in the room, an Asian, it was all white men and me.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how did that make you feel? Do you remember?
Intimidated, but I read a book by Sheryl Sandberg, Lean In, previously, and the big thing that stuck out with me was sit at the table. This is advice I could give. Women often don't sit at the table. I would purposely walk to the front of the room and there'd be tables and I sit at the front. I would make sure that I'd be seen. Walk into a boardroom and it's chairs around the table and then it'll have chairs at the back because it's for overflow, right? And you walk into that room and there's men sitting at the table and the women will walk in and they'll sit in the outskirts. I'm like, get to the table.
Good.
Right? And it can be intimidating, but you've got to be heard. Like if you pay attention in a room of men, nobody puts their hand up. Nobody waits to speak. They just speak.
Right.
And so I've learned to just speak, not interrupt. You find your place, but you still do it with professionalism and you try and set an example. But you don't back down. And I think things are changing. I think that, thank God the world is evolving and diversity is far more prevalent just naturally.
Right.
And I think the youth today have a lot more understanding and tolerance than those of our parents' generation and even our generation in some cases. And one thing I learned also is just be yourself, be your authentic self, right? Like I modulated myself throughout the years, which I think is what led to burnout as well. But it's twofold. I modulated to fit in and to make sure that, I think most of it was because I needed to feel safe. And I didn't necessarily feel safe in these rooms or at these conferences, so I had to really navigate men's personalities in order to be heard and to feel safe. My father started this business, my brothers in the organization. I've had some incredible male mentors. This is not a wide swept thing, right?
Of course.
It exists, the misogyny, it exists at a higher level. And even at lower levels, as women, as marginalized people in organizations, you really have to know your worth and you have to just live your authentic self because the good stuff will come.
Yeah, and I can relate to that. In my banking days, I was a banker for 17 years, and I started as a teller, worked my way all the way up to a senior manager at Scotiabank. And, I saw, like, when we talk about these things, from the outside, you can see, how we've evolved, like, even just as a society in terms of, having far more respect, whether you're, a man or a woman, and truth be told, some of the most successful companies are led by women because women are super fantastic in their leadership roles, right? It's almost like just innately
nurturing.
Yes, they're nurturing and they
collaborative.
Yes,
can make decisions.
Yes,
Like,
there's a lot, and that's why it's so important. I find anyway, my experience has been is trying to surround yourself with strong women. Because, you're only going to learn and benefit. And having, again,
different perspective.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. And so I've seen that over, I remember I was 17-year banker wearing a tie every day. Yeah. Like I remember cleaning up my house, a whole bag full of them. But that's sort of how society has changed over the years, right? And I think it's a good change. Yeah. But I will say it's important not to forget, the podcast is called Old School, New World. Old school values and principles are still important.
Absolutely.
Right? One of my companies or my brokerage, DNA Lending Group, it's called DNA because we're born with innately good human qualities. Yeah. Right? Like we lose it because society changes our views or men are not supposed to cry. Only women are supposed to get emotional. Yeah. And that's completely not the case,
We're all human first.
Oh, and some of my most amazing growth happened during the most emotional time. I've never met a man, woman, or child who's ever had a heartfelt cry, finish that cry, say, "Oh, I feel terrible."
Yeah.
Ever. Yeah. Like, and if you know someone, I would run away from them. And for men, anyhow, and we need to understand it's okay to be vulnerable. Yeah. We're not
welcomed, actually.
We're not supposed to be, oh, yeah, we're the tough guy. We're not going to allow, but it's tough for a lot of men. Yeah. And that's why, they deflect. And if they're in a position of leadership and power,
Yeah.
and they don't know how to be vulnerable,
You're damn right.
guess who's going to take the brunt of it?
Yeah.
The team,
Yeah.
women, someone that they are intimidated by,
Yeah.
whether it's a man or a woman. But typically that's what happens. And it's coming more to the forefront, and it's coming more. If you're not comfortable with something, speak about it.
Yeah.
But again, it's up to leaders.
Yeah. But there's still cultures that don't provide that safety. Hell, I had one of my own.
Yeah.
And it's a core value of mine and always has been. And I allowed my organization to ultimately become that space. And so
Right.
It was, it can happen to anyone. So you really have to be aware of your own energy and the way you're feeling, because that's just going to resonate throughout the whole organization and through your whole journey as an entrepreneur, right? You shouldn't make decisions, based out of fear. If you're not in a calm place or in a good space, your decisions, won't necessarily be the best ones for you or your venture.
Yeah, and listen, it's tough sometimes whenever it is you're doing, building a business, in the business, leading the business. It's hard to detach emotion, but it's important to take a breath sometimes. I'm guilty of it. I could be an impulsive person. If I'm dealing with a lender or trying to figure out something with a team, I've learned and become so much better to take a minute. Or if you don't think that was the right way, it's important to recognize it.
Yeah.
And then be aware.
Yeah.
That's the authenticity. You need to make sure you're tapped into, how you're dealing with things. So I think that's.
Yeah, and you're not being just reactive and
right.
Getting stuck in like something that's happened before, or you get your back up or something.
Yeah.
Like, well, wait a second, why am I feeling this way?
Exactly. Yeah. And sometimes, a lot of the time, if somebody has done something that maybe is rubbing you the wrong way, it probably has nothing to do with them.
Yeah.
Maybe it's something that internally that they're doing that you need to figure out. But that's, another topic for another day. But so because with Commerx is sort of the rebranding, and it's been around for 40 years, it's his birthday this year, anniversary. Where do you see it? Like, talk to me about the future of Commerx and what kind of impact you're hoping it leaves. At one point you'll step aside, and have you started in terms of succession planning? Is that something you're talking about or thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's critical in any organization or for any even entrepreneur that's, you've got to ultimately make sure that you are constantly thinking about succession planning for yourself, for your leaders, for your people, right? Because you want everyone to have the opportunity to grow. In order for them to grow, you need to create the space for somebody else to be learning that role in order to move into it, right? You see people in roles and they hoard the information, right? They don't want to share it. They keep it in their head because they're afraid that they're disposable or whatever, right? And I think it's the complete opposite, right? At least for me as a leader, I want to enable my team to make decisions, to do the right thing, to have everything they need to be successful and to grow. Like, I want ultimately to become irrelevant. Like, I want, to be able to disappear and nobody even notices, because we all, like I said, have the same North Star. So I think that that's really important for succession planning. And, from the future of Commerx, what I see, what I envision is ultimately truly changing the landscape of IT. And what I mean by that is really raising the collective consciousness of the people in this community, because it is predominantly men, at the forefront, white men. And I say that almost with hesitation because this is not a blanket thing, right? We all got to be learning. They've got to learn, we learn from them. Yeah. But, changing the landscape of tolerance and diversity. And there's so many different incredible humans that can really make your organization thrive, but you have to create the space for them. And you have to actually create a plan or a strategy to even see and welcome them, to create a space where they want to be a part of it, right?
That vision has to start within you. If you have that vision that you want, has to be in you, and then you have to sort of bring it out.
Yeah. In IT services, there's a, service desk. In technology, there's a lot of, young men that are coming out of university and, will apply for jobs, starter positions in organizations, Commerx included. And there are women too. There's just tons of women coming out of university that, may apply for the same job. But one thing I've learned, and I think we're taught this from a young age, young boys and girls, boys will just go for it. And even if they don't have the skill, they'll try out for that team, where girls would tend to be like, well, I don't know how to do that, so I shouldn't try for that. Right. So I think that's changing. But where I'm going with that is creating space in your environment to make sure that you interview different people, right? Like you might get 100 resumes, 80 of them are, let's say male, 20 of them are female. And, you think that these people have the qualifications and these ones maybe don't, or maybe they're the same qualifications. I don't know, but actually say, okay, we're going to at least give the women a first interview. Don't let the resume speak for it. Make sure, there's 10 men, 2 women. You're only going to interview these 3 people. And it's you see like the 3 men that you think that those are the ones. Have the chat with the women just to get their perspectives and just to see. So there's ways of doing it. I think that you've got to get creative. So for the future, that's what I'm trying to carve out. I'm trying to carve out a unique environment, and by living that in our culture, right?
Truth is, Rome wasn't built in a day, right? So fell in a day, but it wasn't built in a day. And it's important just to, take the steps, right? And I've found in talking to others that, sometimes you have to take 2 steps back to take 1 step forward, right? But to be able to, keep an open mind to everything that's in front of you. That's the other thing that happens. When you're living a conscious life and you're present and you're authentic, you start to see things, right? Like, it just sort of happens to drop in your lap. And sometimes when you have all of those candidates, you want to make sure you're seeing all of them.
That's right.
Right. And not maybe just being geared to one side or the other. You want to keep an open mind on that.
Yeah.
So I have a closing question to ask you for you to give some advice to all of our audience and listeners. If Joanna Muzzatti could say one thing to her younger self, what would you tell your younger self about where you are today and where you started off that you think would resonate with the younger Joanna Muzzatti?
The one that comes to mind the strongest is, I think I always was my authentic self. I was always my genuine, kind, and compassionate self. But I modulated to make other people feel comfortable. And so I would say, I feel like I got muted in my life many, many times by different people. Okay. And I'm a colorful person.
Love the shirt, do not disturb. Right? I love it.
Yes. I would say that just don't dim your light for anybody. And whatever your unique, whatever your superpower is, whatever makes you unique, don't look to blend in. That's what's going to.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you, farthest.
Yeah, no, that's a beautiful thing, because the dimming the light part, sometimes it could be trauma that dims it. Sometimes it could just be, insecurity that dims it. We all have a light that burns.
Yeah.
And so that's a beautiful thing to remember. If it is dimmed, let it be bright.
Yeah. Find what it is that you need to heal, so that your light can come and shine through again.
100%. Joanna, absolute pleasure having you. If our audience want to see you, talk to you, how could they reach you if they needed to or wanted to?
Speaking of, that's one of the things I see for the future. Like instead of us trying to find good people, they're going to be banging down our doors. Like people should want to work at Commerx.
So how would they reach Commerx?
So speaking of a professional way, so through LinkedIn, look me up on LinkedIn, Joanna Muzzatti. They can always send me an email at joanna.muzzatti@commerx.ca.
Amazing. And we'll have that posted when it comes out. Again, ladies and gentlemen, with distinct honor and privilege, thank you so much, Joanna, for coming out and speaking with us. Loved hearing your story. We'll have to have you back.
I would love to be back, Mike, and thanks. I think this is an amazing platform that you have and great discussions, and I learn a lot from listening, and I know that your listeners will too. So all the best.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you.